Alright, this is a review of today's tutoring session. Today we specifically talked about x and y intercepts, right? And finding them from the line and drawing the line using x and y intercepts. Alright, so to review, to find an x-intercept, okay, what we do is we let y equals 0 and then we solve for x. So in this case, if we solve for 0, so y equals y equals 1/4 x plus 5, we have 0 is equal to 1/4 x plus 5. Okay. Now, if this looks kind of weird, remember we said that we could rewrite it in terms like by flipping the equation, so we could say that it's 1/4 x plus 5 equal 0. Alright? Then let's solve for x. So let's isolate the variable. So we subtract, alright, each side by -5, or we subtract each side by 5. Alright? So we get 1/4 x is equal to -5. Alright, now to divide a fraction, remember that we said that you multiply it by its reciprocal. So it's going to be 4/1. Alright, the reciprocal of 1/4 is 4/1. So let's multiply both sides by 4/1. Okay, so we have x is equal to, well, it's going to be 5/1 times 4/1, which is just 5 times 4. That is x equals 20. So the x-intercept is 20. Let's find the y-intercept. Now to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x and we solve for y. So we have y is equal to 1/4 times 0 plus 5. So this becomes 0, so we have left over is just 5. So the y-intercept is much easier to find, and it's 5. Now if we're going to graph this, remember that the x-intercept, alright, is going to be the x value. For example, right here, it's going to be 20, alright, the x value. And then the y is going to be 0, okay? That's what x-intercept means. And the y-intercept is going to be, x is going to be 0, and then the y value, which is going to be 5. So we have 5, so 0, 5. So what we do is plot these points. So here, well, let's just give an estimate. Let's say that, you know, this is going to be 10, this is going to be 20, okay? So it's going to be 20, 0, right? 20, 0. So we plot the point there, and the y-intercept is 0, 5. So let's just say that this is 5. So right, so this is 0, 5. Since we got two points, we can make a rough line like that, right? So you just find the two intercepts, and you can find what the line will be. Okay, let's try one more problem. Alright, this time we have y equals -2/3 x minus 1. So let's find that. Let's first start with the y-intercept, because that's usually easier to find. So let's plug in 0, alright, for x. So y is equal to, let's see that equation, -2/3 times 0, because we're plugging in that x value, minus 1. So that's equal to, well, this whole thing becomes 0, right? So we can cancel that out. And then we have left over -1. So that's the y-intercept, -1. Let's find the x-intercept. Okay, so now we have to have this equation equal 0, right? Because y is going to be 0. So we can have -2/3 x minus 1, right? Because that is the equation, is equal to 0. Now let's solve for x. So let's subtract both sides, or not subtract, okay? But here we have a -1, right? So what we need to do is we need to add 1 to both sides. So if you want to isolate x, and we have a number next to it, well, for example, -1, what we need to do is we need to use the opposite process of what it is. So if we have a -1, right, then we have to add 1. Now if this was +1, then of course we would have to subtract 1, right? Because this is a -1, we add 1 to both sides. Okay, so these both cancel. So we have 2/3 x is equal to 1. Okay, alright, and again, the way we find x, alright, is we need to multiply this by its reciprocal. So it's going to be -3/2, right? So -3/2. And then we do both sides, we multiply -3/2. Don't forget that negative sign. Okay, so these cancel out. And then we have x is equal to 1 times -3/2, which is just -3/2. So our x-intercept is -3/2. Right, now if we do that as a ordered pair, then it's going to be -3/2, which is the x value, right? X value, comma 0. And then the y-intercept is going to be 0 for x, and then the y value, which is -1. So now let's just plot these points, okay? So we're going to have -3 comma -3/2 comma 0. So -3/2 is actually somewhere between -1 and -2. It's actually in between. So it's actually -1.5. So it's right there. That's your x-intercept. What about your y-intercept? That's just 0 comma -1. So that's just, let's say that's -1 right there. Alright. So that's 0 comma -1. And then we can draw the line out like that. Alright. So again, the definition of an x-intercept is the x value comma 0. The y-intercept is 0 comma the y value. Alright.